You're listening to Stay a While, a place where we share our stories. There's a new episode every week.
Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you share with us, the articles, the research, the deep thoughts, and we really use them as a launch pad.
Right.
We use them to explore these complex ideas, not just, quickly, but thoroughly and with genuine enjoyment.
And this week, the sources you shared with us were, well, frankly, they were beautiful. They have this rare, intimate tone. It blends philosophy, emotional connection, and then this highly practical manual for really achieving deep knowledge. It feels like getting a late-night letter from your wisest friend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A late night letter. The atmosphere is immediately set by this mention of cold weather and, the need for warmth.
Yeah.
And we know many of you listening right now might be experiencing cold or turbulent times, whether those storms are literal or metaphorical.
And these sources, they speak directly to that. They focus on the power of emotional connection, this feeling of trike.
Can you unpack that word for us a little? Trike.
Well, it's so much more than just close friend. It really carries the weight of a soulmate. It's someone who understands you without words.
Wow.
Someone who provides that sincere, deep, emotional connection. It's a very, very high bar for friendship.
So with that in mind, our mission today is really tailored to that spirit. We're aiming to explore how to achieve a deep, lasting understanding.
An intellectual fulfillment.
Yes, an intellectual fulfillment that feels just as warm, just as reliable as that tri-key connection. We want this deep dive to share just a little of that emotional warmth with you, our listener, today.
And the stage for all of this is set by a really profound observation from the source material.
Which is?
That good feelings, positive emotions, they're wonderfully contagious. They're meant to spread. The source uses the term lantroin.
Lantroin.
They're meant to spread from one mind to another.
That's a powerful idea. If that's true for happiness, for joy, for care, then it has to be true for intellectual curiosity, right?
It has to be.
And for the satisfaction of discovery. If we can share warmth, we can certainly share the joy of learning.
So that's the plan. We begin with the heart, with the source of that emotional warmth. And then we'll transition pretty seamlessly into this systematic path for creating intellectual warmth.
Which is the recall method and the rule of 7.
Exactly. Because, as the author of your sources explores, the pursuit of that reliable internal satisfaction, that's often what drives us to seek deep learning in the first place. The author, they begin this whole journey with an incredibly honest anecdote.
Right.
They describe experiencing days of just genuine, profound despair. The word they use is tuitvak.
And they analyze this state not just as, sadness, but as something much deeper.
A complete failure of your internal coping mechanisms.
These aren't just, moments of mild annoyance or a bad mood. This is one of the things you usually rely on to stabilize yourself.
They completely fail you.
Completely. You go to eat something comforting, and it brings no sense of well-being at all.
Or you turn on music, and the notes they sound flat, empty, devoid of any emotion.
Precisely. The source even mentions their usual escape watching movies, which is normally a reliable source of entertainment, of distraction.
But even that fails.
It fails to engage them. The despair is just so deep, so encompassing, that nothing, absolutely nothing in their normal environment seems to work.
It can't pull them out of that psychological abyss.
And the real danger of that state, which the sources articulate so well, is the feeling of absolute inevitability. The world just looks uniformly negative.
Hopeless, closed off.
You feel completely stranded in your own mind, regardless of what's physically around you. It's like an internal quarantine.
It is. But what's so fascinating is how the breakthrough happens. It's not through some monumental effort of will or a complex therapeutic intervention. The shift, this profound shift, is triggered by something small.
Simple.
And often entirely unexpected, a genuine connection.
It could be just a text message, right?
Yeah.
Or a quick phone call.
Or just a few words of sincere concern from someone.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. The author points out that this lifeline, it sometimes came from someone they didn't even expect to hear from.
Yes, that surprise element, it actually enhances the effect.
It does. It underscores that the source of the care is, in a way, less important than the sincerity of the care itself.
So why does this work? Why does this tiny little gesture work instantly when hours of trying to self-soothe just failed completely?
It's a great question.
The analysis in the source material is, I think, deeply insightful here. It's not about the factual content of the message. I mean, how are you is not a groundbreaking question.
Right, it's pretty standard.
It's about the emotional container, that simple communication. It carries love, care, and genuine concern. What the sources call jantin, kumsuk, sakwandam.
Chanting, I like that. So it's the sheer, unadulterated sincerity of it.
That's what matters.
It's the simple act of asking after them, the demonstration that you are seeing, that acts like a lightning rod. It pulls you out of that mental fog.
Despair is self-absorption turned toxic, and external, genuine care. It shatters that isolation instantly.
The author describes the effect as nothing short of healing. The phrase is sutyalan.
A healing, and the timeline, the speed of this shift, is what makes the anecdote so powerful.
Right.
5 minutes before the message arrived, life was viewed as negative and without hope. The moment that genuine, sincere sentiment landed,
Everything changed.
the speaker immediately felt happy, energized, and the world just. It transformed. It looked beautiful again.
That instantaneous change really proves a crucial point about the nature of emotional despair, doesn't it?
It really does.
It suggests that the problem isn't some deep structural flaw in your life. It's a temporary short circuit.
Caused by a lack of perceived connection.
Exactly. And external warmth can recalibrate us in a flash.
It's the immediate, measurable therapeutic power of a sincere connection. This whole strange, fast experience, it taught the author an invaluable lesson.
Which is that we have this fundamental need to both receive and to give genuine care.
It forms the entire philosophical underpinning of that tri-K ideal we mentioned.
It really underscores the idea that connection isn't a luxury. It's fundamental to our well-being, to our resilience.
If we can heal each other so quickly, if our emotions are that contagious, it places a profound responsibility on us to share that warmth.
To actively ask after others.
Yeah.
And that, I think, brings us perfectly to our shift in focus. The goal of finding a path to deep, joyful learning is really about creating a form of internal warmth, a fulfillment that's just as reliable and just as instantaneous as that external emotional healing we've been talking about.
Okay.
So let's unpack this. We're transitioning from emotional care to intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
And we start with the author's, remarkably focused personal philosophy on learning.
It's very focused.
They state pretty emphatically that they prefer learning over teaching.
They even quantify it, which is fascinating to me. They describe themselves as a 95% learner,
95.
sometimes even reaching 99% learning and only 1% sharing or teaching. And even then, only if it's absolutely necessary.
Like to help a close friend.
Exactly. Someone who's truly stuck on a knowledge hurdle.
This is such a critical distinction for you, the listener, to grasp. This isn't the typical modern desire to, learn something just so you can immediately go teach it or monetize it.
No, not at all. This is a deep, personal drive to acquire knowledge for its own intrinsic value. The joy is in the consumption, the understanding.
The internal integration.
Exactly. It suggests that for this person, knowledge acquisition is the primary source of sustained personal enjoyment and growth. It far outweighs the satisfaction of, say, dissemination.
So it establishes this foundational belief that learning is a selfish, self-enriching activity, but in the best possible sense of that word.
In the best way, yeah.
And the mission they derive from this intense love of learning is simple. They want to spread this passion, this intellectual excitement, this sumehak, because they truly believe that this way of life, anchored in deep learning, is just wonderful.
And they connect this passion directly back to the emotional goal we just discussed. They frame happiness as a destination.
Or maybe a continuous state.
Perhaps more accurately, yeah, a continuous state. Their argument is that once you experience the happiness derived from deep, focused learning,
From true internal understanding.
you will never be satisfied returning to a life that is boring or shallow or, intellectually complacent.
That's a huge promise.
Yeah.
A powerful promise. It's a promise of a life transformation just by changing how you engage with information.
It is.
And to help us grasp the difference between that shallow engagement and a true transformation, they give us two incredible analogies, starting with the rose.
The rose analogy is the perfect aha moment. It differentiates between knowing something and truly experiencing it. So you can know the rose through a detailed structural description. The source describes it perfectly. It has a cylindrical base, the petals twist into one another.
One petal provides support for the next. You can read that, and you know the facts.
You can understand the mechanics of the rose, the botany, the physics of its structure. You can know it.
There's a but.
There's a but. The point is, without the true firsthand experiential knowledge, without seeing the specific hue of the red, feeling that velvet texture of the petals, or smelling its complex, sweet scent, you cannot truly understand the rose.
The essence is missing.
The essence is missing. And this is the critical philosophical leap. Deep learning and happiness are identical to the rose.
How so?
You can read 1,000 books on physics or philosophy or relationships, but until you fully experience the comprehension,
The application.
the internal shift that true knowledge brings, until then, the information remains flat. It's just descriptive data points.
And they reinforce this with another analogy, right?
Yeah.
The perfume analogy.
Yes. If you try to describe the scent of a complex perfume, the top notes of citrus, the heart of rose and jasmine, the base of musk and amber.
You can list the ingredients.
You can. But for someone who has never smelled it, they can read that list, but they can't grasp the overall complexity, the feeling, the throw, the emotional resonance of the scent.
Life, they conclude, only reveals its profound beauty through firsthand, immersive experience.
And for the author, the joy derived from deep focus learning is precisely that kind of immersive experience.
It's a flavor of satisfaction that isn't abstract.
No, it's something you have to feel in your bones to realize just how much you are missing when your intellectual life was just defined by the surface level.
So if the ultimate goal is this experiential joy, then we have to recognize that the modern way of consuming information, rushing, skimming, optimizing for speed,
Yeah.
it actively works against that goal.
Okay, so before we dive into the method, we have to fully appreciate the gravity of the problem this method is trying to solve.
The author lays down a core premise, which is elegantly simple but brutally honest.
It is no recall, no growth.
No recall, no growth. That phrase is a mantra.
It is. It means that knowledge is inert until you retrieve it. And recall, here, means the active process of memory retrieval and application.
Not just passive recognition.
No. If you can't bring it back up to the surface when you need it, you never truly owned it in the first place.
And the consequence of neglecting this active retrieval is, as they state, that information is just. It's not absorbed. It's not truly understood.
Learning becomes superficial. They use this vivid, deeply cultural phrase.
Looking at flowers from horseback.
Looking at flowers from horseback. What a potent image that is.
It really is. When you're rushing past on a horse, you register that the flowers exist. Maybe they're colorful, but you certainly don't stop.
You don't dismount or kneel down to appreciate the details, feel the texture, understand their specific structure.
You're just a blur passing through the garden. You're floating around haphazardly, or what's the phrase?
Hello, foot.
Kalafutfer. It perfectly captures the illusion of productivity that permeates so much of modern self-help culture.
We confuse the activity of consuming information, reading 50 books a year, with the achievement of gaining genuine, lasting knowledge.
We're mistaking exposure for mastery.
And the real-world evidence of this cognitive debt is everywhere. The sources note the common observation that not everyone who claims to study or learn achieves deep knowledge.
Their understanding is fragmented.
It's shallow, slight, incomplete. They have these little bits and pieces, young of information, but no cohesive intellectual structure.
Which brings us to a crucial detail, this anecdote about the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes, this is the perfect case study for identifying shallow reading.
Why that book in particular?
The source speaker notes that this is not a difficult text. It's an introductory book on, human psychology and communication.
Right, it's not brain-twisting material.
Not at all. It should be easily digestible for anyone serious about self-improvement.
And yet,
when the author asked a reader who had successfully finished the book what it was about, the response was vague.
winning friends.
Meaning friends. That superficial summary reveals that the reader had internalized the title of the book.
But not the content, not the mechanisms it described.
So the author then pressed them, which is the crucial diagnostic test. They asked the reader to list 5 profound, actionable takeaways from the text.
Specific rules or mechanisms that were substantial and detailed.
Things that would demonstrate real comprehension, and the reader struggled immensely.
And what could they come up with?
They could only recall one general rule, something like compliment before criticizing.
Yeah.
And that was it. Absolutely nothing else of substance.
And this is where the time spent becomes quantified as a total loss.
Think about the psychological consequence of that. The reader spent hours performing the task of reading,
Right.
yet gained no real actionable knowledge that would actually improve their life or their ability to influence others. The time spent was a complete waste. Long fi.
They incurred cognitive debt. They did the work, but they didn't get the benefit.
It's doubly frustrating because the concepts in that particular book are designed to be immediately applicable. If you can't recall the core rules, you can't use them.
The knowledge just stays locked inside the book, not inside your mind.
And if this phenomenon, this immediate cognitive evaporation, happens with an introductory text like that,
Then what happens with the hard stuff?
we have to consider the devastating implications for those tackling complex, valuable, or challenging brain-twisting books. How can anyone absorb philosophy or history or advanced technical material if they can't even nail down the basics from an easy read?
So the ultimate takeaway here is that speed. Speed is an enemy of retention. The problem isn't the book. The problem is the method.
Exactly. And that perfectly sets the stage for the necessary practical solution we're about to get into.
The recall method and the rule of 7. We need a system that forces the brain to stop looking at flowers from horseback. Okay, let's pivot from the problem to the solution and get deeply practical here. We've established the need for deep experiential learning. The author starts by establishing their preferred medium, reading books.
The rationale for books over, say, video courses is highly logical, and it focuses entirely on control.
Control.
Books allow you, the reader, to precisely adjust your speed based entirely on your current knowledge level. If the content is easy, you skim through at high speed. If it's intellectually demanding,
You slow down, sometimes to a near stop.
and that precise subjective control is the key. Video limits you might hit 2 times speed maximum.
And the act of pausing, rewinding, it just breaks the flow.
It completely breaks the flow of thought. The mental tax of repeatedly stopping and starting a video is so much higher than the mental tax of just staring at a sentence on a static page until clarity is achieved.
So the whole foundation of the method is a mindset shift. Self-study is not about hitting a KPI. It's not about finishing 4 books a month.
It's fundamentally about understanding, enjoying, and achieving a profound level of comprehension. If a paragraph requires 60 minutes of analysis and deep thought,
That hour is better spent than rushing through 10 pages and retaining nothing.
exactly. That focus on time well spent connects directly back to the idea of a meaningful life we discussed earlier. If you're truly present and achieving understanding, you're sipping happiness, even if the pace seems slow.
Okay, so let's walk through the 4 steps of the recall method, which builds up the necessary mental resistance training for the rule of 7.
Step 1. The sentence-by-sentence scan. You read one sentence, you do not move on.
Just one.
Just one. Immediately, you scan that sentence for full, explicit comprehension. You are checking not just the overall meaning, but checking aggressively for any unknown vocabulary or confusing concepts.
So this is the first point of friction, the first time you prevent the brain from flying past on horseback.
Yes. If a concept is unknown, they use the example of the word tuing, which means explicit or clear. You must stop. The commitment here is absolute clarity before progression.
And the resource check is what makes this so modern. You don't just use an old dictionary.
No, you leverage high-speed external tools like AI. The author suggests taking a picture of the page or the paragraph and prompting AI, like ChatGPT, to provide a clear, contextual definition of that specific word.
Within that specific text.
That's the key part, contextual.
Wait, I have to challenge this point, though. If I'm reading a complex philosophical text, I might hit an unknown word every 3rd sentence. If I stop, take a picture, prompt the AI, read the definition, and then resume, that initial hour on one paragraph could become 2 hours.
That's a great point.
How do we prevent this method from becoming, a tool for procrastination, or from becoming so tedious that the learner just quits?
And the author addresses this implicitly through the enjoyment principle. The goal is not speed. The goal is comprehensive understanding that leads to enjoyment. That initial effort, the mental resistance, is necessary. Think of it as front-loading your effort. You pay the cognitive price up front, so you don't pay it later when the book gets complex.
So you're saying if I let 5 unknown words slide, the 6th paragraph might become impenetrable.
And you'll be forced to quit the book entirely. The time you spend using the AI now is an investment against later frustration and ultimately against failure.
Okay, so the meticulousness of the sentence-by-sentence scan is about preventing future cognitive debt. Understood.
Once that first sentence is completely clear, you move to step 2, micro-recall. This is the primer.
Okay.
Before reading the second sentence, you mentally recall, or NIM, what the previous sentence covered.
That seems simple, but I imagine it's a crucial mechanism for breaking that habit of the passive eye.
It is. It forces the brain to confirm retention before it adds new data. It acts as an active disruptor.
It prevents the brain from going on autopilot, which is what happens when you skim.
Exactly. You pause the eye, you engage the retrieval function, even for just a moment, forcing the information from visual short-term memory into something slightly more consolidated. It's a warm-up.
A warm-up for the heavier lift to come.
Yeah.
So you repeat this process scan, resource check, micro-recall, until you complete a whole paragraph. And that leads to the critical step 3.
Paragraph review and enjoyment.
This is the emotional and intellectual assessment.
Yes. Once the paragraph is complete, you must stop everything and ask yourself 2 absolutely essential questions. Did I enjoy this, and do I understand it completely?
The sources use that specific phrase, right? Toiko, toifiko.
Toiko toifikong. Do I feel that deep intellectual satisfaction? That wow moment?
That inclusion of the word fee satisfaction or enjoyment as a required metric is fascinating. Is enjoyment truly a reliable metric for understanding?
It's a fair question.
What if I'm reading a very technical manual on coding or tax law? That material might be crucial to understand, but not inherently enjoyable in the same way poetry is.
The author defines this enjoyment differently. It's not necessarily excitement or humor. Fei, in this context, is the deep satisfaction that comes specifically from mastery.
Oh, okay.
It's the feeling of internal congruence, that click of understanding when a complex concept finally locks into place. If you don't feel that click, if the concept feels slippery or incomplete, the engagement was superficial.
So if the answer to either question is no, you have to reread the section.
Until satisfaction and complete total understanding are achieved, it is a non-negotiable gate.
So by using enjoyment as the metric, you are essentially ensuring that the learning is experiential, not just passive. If you don't feel the rose, you haven't understood it.
You've got it. Which finally brings us to the centerpiece, the core cognitive technique, the rule of 7.
And the first action here is radical, but necessary. Close the book.
It's a ritualistic act of cognitive severance. You have to break the visual link to the source material. You take a clean notebook and a pen.
And the task is to list 7 things. A minimum of 7 things you just learned from that single paragraph.
This is where the mental gym practice begins. And the author is very specific about the number 7.
Yeah, why 7? Why not 3 or 10?
The author provides a brilliant piece of practical cognitive theory here. Listing just 3 things is too easy. It only engages your short-term or immediate memory.
The surface level retention that vanishes quickly.
Right. But forcing yourself to list 5, 6, and especially 7 things, that pushes the brain into struggle, and that's intentional.
It's cognitive resistance training.
Precisely. It's mental weightlifting, or Tup Dream Cho known. To access that 5th, 6th, and 7th point, the brain has to struggle. It has to rummage through its recently acquired temporary data and actively construct a coherent thought.
And this effort is what pushes the brain out of its comfort zone.
And trains its analytical and, most importantly, its retrieval capacity. A brain that is frequently made to work hard in retrieval is a brain that builds a strong, long-lasting memory foundation.
So this directly addresses the core problem of superficial reading, the lack of friction. The rule of 7 injects that necessary friction right at the point of retention.
And the most crucial element, the one that guarantees the quality of the insights, is the closed book.
Why is that so important?
If the book is open, selecting important points is random or haphazard. You just copy or highlight what looks good. That's passive recording.
But by closing the book, you force the brain into a natural filtration system.
You can only recall what your subconscious deemed salient enough to retain during the deep engagement of steps 1 through 3.
That's the magic. The brain automatically filters and retains the things it naturally deems most important based on the unique learning experience you just had.
The 7 points you write down are not random selections. They are the 7 most salient, personally relevant pieces of information your cognition prioritized. It harnesses the brain's very excellent filters, built from your own context and your own needs.
I can see how powerful this would be. If I'm interested in the practical application of a concept, my brain will prioritize practical details.
Exactly.
But if I'm interested in the philosophical underpinnings, my 7 points will reflect that. It makes the learning intensely personalized.
And while 7 is the minimum threshold, the point of necessary struggle, if you are still excited after hitting 7, you can list 8, 9, or 10. The rule is simply rigid on the floor, never less than 7.
The intensity of this method seems exhausting, though.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, if I apply this to a 400-page book, even if I speed up later, I feel like the psychological barrier to starting would be enormous. How does the author suggest maintaining the motivation when the initial pace is so punishingly slow?
The key is shifting the goal, which leads us directly into our next section. The author argues that you have to divorce yourself completely from the notion of finishing the book.
The motivation has to be intrinsic satisfaction in the moment.
Right. If you focus on the quality of the learning and the instant comprehension you get from this paragraph, you are constantly receiving many rewards. You are sipping happiness right now, rather than waiting for the distant, abstract reward of hitting the final page.
The goal is the joy of the process, not the quantity of the output.
So the immediate cognitive reward of listing those 7 points and achieving that moment of fey, that acts as the fuel.
The fuel that overcomes the friction of the process.
Exactly. You repeat this entire process, read, understand, enjoy, recall 7 for every single subsequent paragraph. The rhythm is established, and the effort pays off immediately in knowledge retention. So once this method is internalized, it accomplishes that fundamental shift in objective we just touched on. The goal is no longer to rush and finish the book, or rush and finish the course.
The new elevated goal is sipping happiness. Namnito Jangpamfuk.
That concept of sipping time implies savoring, focusing on the quality of the moment, the intrinsic joy and understanding derived from the present second of engagement.
It's a very Eastern presence-focused approach. It contrasts so sharply with the Western, goal-oriented, KPI-driven method of learning.
It's a difference between drinking a rushed shot of espresso and savoring a perfect cup of tea. The value is not in the quantity consumed,
but the quality of the experience right now. When you are truly present, focused, and deriving intrinsic satisfaction from the knowledge you are building, you are happy right now.
And this brings us to the crucial element that overcomes that initial fear of slowness.
The paradox of speed.
The author readily concedes that the method starts painfully slow. You might, in fact, read only 1 paragraph in an hour if the text is exceptionally dense.
Or if you have to look up 3 terms and force your brain to find 7 takeaways, it seems grueling.
If I told a listener they might only get through 5 pages in their first 3 hours of reading using this method, they might understandably balk.
I would.
But this slow, deep building of foundational knowledge accelerates learning dramatically later on. Think of knowledge acquisition as building a pyramid. If you rush the base, if the first layer of stones is placed haphazardly, the 3rd layer will collapse. You'll have to constantly go back and fix earlier mistakes, which takes exponential time.
But the deep learner, on the other hand, is meticulously laying the foundation.
And once the learner is in the rhythm, the phrase is Jacquinra.
Right.
Once the brain has internalized the necessity of recall and the filter is tuned,
their reading speed increases dramatically.
They are able to absorb complex concepts almost immediately, right? Because the vocabulary is already settled, the foundational concepts are perfectly seated, and they rarely need to look up or reread material.
They comprehend everything on the first pass.
Which contrasts so starkly with the rushing skimmer. The skimmer eventually hits a massive, unyielding wall. They get frustrated, lost, and tired because later concepts inevitably build on earlier, misunderstood ones.
They have an unstable cognitive structure.
And that instability leads to 2 outcomes. They either quit the book entirely, creating a cycle of failure and shame,
or they have to start over from the beginning, having wasted hours of initial effort.
The slow, deep, rule-based approach, despite its initial intensity, is ultimately faster and, critically, more enduring in the long run. You build a strong house on an unshakable foundation.
And finally, the method links the intellectual process back to the initial emotional warmth we discussed in the opening section.
It comes full circle.
When you learn this way, when you are fully present and achieving deep comprehension, you are experiencing true enjoyment, that satisfying fey.
And this deep focus means, with absolute certainty that you are not wasting your life on shallow or useless activities. You are not engaged in trovo bowl.
Your time is spent meaningfully, constructively, and enjoyably.
And this realization that your life is being spent meaningfully leads directly back to the ultimate highest goal of life, as defined by the source.
To be happy right now, in this moment. Je futne hanfuk.
It transforms learning from a necessary chore or a future investment into an immediate form of contentment. The finish line of the book becomes irrelevant.
The goal is simply the joy and satisfaction of the present second, savoring that hard-won understanding.
And like the analogies taught us, you cannot just listen to us describe this joy, you have to experience it.
Once you apply the rule of 7 and feel that particular flavor of intellectual satisfaction, The authors promise you will never want to live a shallow, intellectually wasteful life again.
This process, they promise, can truly change your perspective on everything.
Wow. What a profound and intimate deep dive this has been. We started this journey searching for warmth in a turbulent world.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that warmth in two intertwined places. First, in the profound, instantaneous healing power of emotional connection and sincere care, encapsulated in that beautiful ideal of Tricak.
And second, we found it in the intellectual satisfaction delivered by focused, non-superficial effort. That systematic approach, the meticulous sentence-by-sentence scan,
The non-negotiable check for enjoyment.
and the powerful discipline of the Rule of Seven. It provides a guaranteed way to transform shallow, wasted effort into enduring understanding and lasting, instantaneous happiness.
And remember the mechanism of the Rule of Seven. It works because it forces your brain to struggle, making it exercise, and simultaneously leverages your brain's natural filtering system.
By forcing you to recall those 7 key things without the visual aid of the closed book.
That closed book filtration process is what matters most. It reveals what your mind truly prioritizes and retained when the pressure was on.
It really does.
So as a final provocative thought for you to chew on, we've focused on reading today, but the core principle is cognitive retrieval under duress.
Right.
So let's challenge you to apply the Rule of Seven concept to a non-reading activity today. Maybe you've just had a long, intense meeting or a challenging conversation with a colleague.
Or maybe you watched a complex documentary or a film that really moved you.
Take that simple mental challenge, close your mental book on that experience, sit down with a notebook later this afternoon.
Don't look at your meeting notes or your phone or replay the experience in your head right away. Give yourself just a moment of stillness.
Now ask yourself, what are the 7 things, the 7 specific details, insights, or feelings that your brain naturally filtered as most important from that experience?
The 7 things your mind is holding on to right now.
This simple act is the first step in translating the joy of intellectual depth into the everyday experience of life. And it's how you start understanding your own knowledge priorities.
We wish you success in trying that challenge.
We hope you felt a little bit warmer after spending this time with us, cozying up to the idea of deep, satisfying knowledge. Thank you for listening, for sharing your sources, and for being our Trikai on this deep dive.
Until next time, we wish you, your family, and your friends a truly warm and intellectually fulfilling week, regardless of the temperature outside.